Imagine stepping into the 14th century, a peasant's hut somewhere in northern Europe, when the Little Ice Age began tightening its grip. Nights were not just long and dark, they were perilously cold. Your home is a fragile shell of timber and mud. Each gust of wind sneaks through gaps in the walls, rattling the structure. Outside, snow piles against the door, pressing in like a silent invader. In this world, sleep itself becomes a question of survival. The Little Ice Age was not a storm or a season, but centuries of lowered temperatures. From the 14th through the 19th century, Europe's climate shifted. Summers grew brief, winters stretched on endlessly, and even June could bring frost to the soil. For the ordinary person, this relentless chill was more than discomfort. To drift into sleep unguarded against the cold meant risking frostbite, illness, or never waking again. Nights turned into a battlefield, but instead of swords or spears, survival depended on habits, traditions, and sheer resilience. Daily rhythms changed. Villagers retreated to their homes as soon as the light faded. The long darkness of winter forced families to bed earlier than we might expect, often with the hearth reduced to glowing embers by midnight. In monasteries, monks wrote of how the cold gnawed at them even during prayer, while knights required double cloaks just to stand guard. Chroniclers described rivers frozen so solid that horses and carts rolled across them. If water could harden into stone, one can imagine how still bodies fared, while trying to rest through the night. Unlike the stone halls of nobles, peasants lived in huts of timber and wattle and daub. Mud and straw packed together. These walls cracked easily, and the chill seeped through without mercy. Floors of bare earth meant the cold rose directly into bones. Thatched roofs, woven from straw and reeds, looked quaint but held little warmth. Snow often piled on top, melting and dripping through into the home. To fight drafts, families hung animal hides or rags, but true insulation did not exist. Once the hearth's fire faded, the house transformed into a box of ice. Children curled into their parents' arms, elders shivered in corners, and even beneath heavy wool blankets the chill remained. For the poorest, there were no blankets, only cloaks patched from scraps or straw scattered on the ground. The human body itself became the most dependable heater. Families discovered that survival was easier when they slept together. Beds, wide and crude, were designed less for comfort and more for bodies packed side by side. Parents, children, and sometimes even servants shared one frame stuffed with straw. Wealthier families with feather mattresses and carved wooden beds still embraced the same principle. More people meant more warmth. Historians call these clusters of sleepers nests of people. Privacy dissolved. Breathing and body heat blended into a communal defense against the night. This practice extended beyond family. Inns forced travelers to share beds with strangers, trust outweighed by need. In monasteries, novices and monks shared chambers, their closeness as vital as prayer itself. A bed in the Middle Ages was not only a resting place, it was a fortress against the cold. But what lay beneath and above mattered too. The poor slept on sacks stuffed with straw, reeds, or dried leaves. Scratchy, insect-prone, and flattened quickly, these primitive mattresses nevertheless offered a barrier against frozen earth. The wealthy reclined on down-filled cushions, yet even they complained of winter's bite. Blankets became weapons in the nightly war. Heavy wool, sometimes stacked 2 or 3 deep, was draped across families. Where wool was not enough, hides of goats or sheep were added. Imagine the sound, the creak of wooden beams, the faint hiss of wind through cracks, the weight of wool pressing down with the day's labour still clinging to its fibres. Nobles slept beneath embroidered quilts, peasants beneath patched cloaks, but both fought the same invader, the creeping cold. Fire was the most treasured companion, yet fickle. Wealthier homes had hearths in their chambers where logs crackled deep into the night. For peasants, the single central hearth was tended in the evening, but by midnight only embers remained. Families pulled closer, conserving every spark. Fuel was costly, forests shrank under demand, and hauling wood was exhausting. To make the most of what little they had, people devised clever tools. A bedwarmer, a metal pan filled with glowing coals, was slid between sheets before sleep. Stones heated at the hearth were wrapped in cloth or jars to glow faintly beneath blankets. These small gestures bought time, delaying the icy grip. But fire had its dangers. Too much smoke choked lungs, sparks leapt onto thatched roofs, and there was never enough wood to last till dawn. Clothing became the final shield. Modern sleepers change into nightwear. Medieval peasants rarely did. They slept in the same wool tunics, trousers, or cloaks worn during the day. For wealthier households, long linen shifts or thick nightshirts existed, but all shared one vital accessory: the nightcap. A simple wool or linen cap tied under the chin kept precious heat from escaping the head. Artwork from the late Middle Ages often shows sleepers with pointed or rounded caps, faces hidden, only noses exposed. Socks, mittens, extra tunics, even strips of cloth wound around feet, became common. To modern eyes, bundling into bed fully dressed seemed stifling, but to them it was survival. Clothes were armour, every layer a promise that morning would arrive, and sometimes warmth came not only from family but from animals. In rural huts, livestock often shared the same living space. Cows, sheep, goats, and chickens were more than resources, they were heaters. A cow's bulk radiated warmth like a living stove. Sheep and goats added to the air's temperature, and chickens' soft rustlings carried a trace of heat. The arrangement was messy. The smell of manure, the stir of hooves, fleas and lice thriving in the corners, yet essential. Foreign travellers were shocked at these conditions, but for those in the heart of the Little Ice Age, survival meant sharing the same roof. Human breath mingled with animal breath, each creature a small defence against the night. Today, we think of bedrooms as private retreats, but in the Middle Ages sleep was communal. Closeness to kin, strangers, or even livestock was as important as blankets or fire. This intimacy was not sentiment, it was survival. The lessons of those frozen centuries remain woven into the story of human resilience. Ironically, what peasants feared most, the cold draft, is something many people now deliberately seek. Modern research shows that sleeping in cooler rooms improves rest, lowering core temperature and triggering natural rhythms. Sleep specialists recommend keeping bedrooms between 15 and 19 degrees Celsius, a range once unbearable to thin-walled huts. Weighted blankets, marketed today as luxury items, recall the crushing woolen covers peasants once relied on. Flannel pyjamas, thick socks and knit hats echo the layered medieval garb, except now we choose them for comfort, not necessity. Some even open their windows on winter nights, deliberately inviting in the chill. Technology offers electric blankets, climate control and heated mattresses, yet people chase the crisp edge of cold air as if reenacting the survival habits of ancestors. What once was terror has been reshaped into lifestyle. But cold was not the only influence. The long nights of winter, stretching up to 16 hours, shaped sleep itself. Medieval people practiced what scholars call segmented sleep. After dusk, families went to bed wrapped in wool and straw. 4 or 5 hours later, many awoke naturally. This waking interval was not dreaded but embraced. Some tended the fire, stirring coals back to life. Others whispered prayers in the dim glow, told stories, or even visited neighbours in the still silence. Doctors and philosophers referred to these pauses as the time between first sleep and second sleep. By dawn, after the second rest, The household stirred to begin the day. The rhythm fit the season. Long, dark nights divided into halves, bridged by a quiet hour of reflection and warmth. Cold reinforced this pattern. Fires needed attention, and no one could sleep endlessly in such conditions. The ingenuity did not end with segmented rest. Families experimented with everything at their disposal. Bedwarmers, caps pulled tight, straw piled against frozen earth. Each innovation spoke to a refusal to yield. They accepted the cold as an adversary they could not conquer, but one they could withstand. Survival was a collective act. Parents drew children close. Grandparents shared their body heat with grandchildren. Travellers lay shoulder to shoulder with strangers in inns. Monks and novices prayed and shivered side by side. Cows and sheep joined the human circle of warmth. In every creak of wind against the hut, in every ember stirred at midnight, the message was clear: one does not endure the cold alone. Looking back, there is a lesson in this intimacy. Today we isolate ourselves behind walls, doors and technology, imagining sleep as private. In the Middle Ages it was communal, an act of trust, a weaving of bodies and breath in defiance of freezing dark. Comfort was not fire alone or thick wool, but the presence of others. The Little Ice Age forced people to change the way they slept, but it also revealed something timeless. That survival, in the end, depends not only on blankets or firewood, but on the bonds between people. In their world, the cold tested the body and the spirit alike. It demanded closeness, cooperation, and faith that morning would come. Perhaps that is their most enduring wisdom, that in the silence of winter nights, warmth is not just physical, it is shared.